Hello everyone and Assalamu alaikum. This is Introduction to Psychology Part 2 by Dear Knowledge. Okay, so we have started the chapter of learning and we have covered lots of topic in the chapter of learning. So here you can see on the screen I've shared the chapter overview with you all on the topics which we will be covering in the chapter of learning. So here are the topics which we will be covering in the chapter of learning. Let me share a quick recap with you all on what we have covered so far. So, in the lesson 1, we learned about the definition of learning, in which we started with a proper case study and then we learned about definition of learning, and we also discussed the different words that were used or different terms that were used in the definition of learning. And then after that, we started with the lesson 2. The lesson 2 is about the types of learning. So since the types of learning was a very detailed one, so that's why I divided the types of learning into different parts. So the part 1 is about the classical conditioning and the part 2 is about the operant conditioning. So again, the part 1 was a bit lengthy one. I wanted to include all the topics in the classical conditioning, so you don't have to go here and there, you don't have to search here and there for every single topic. So that's why I decided to include all the topics on one platform. So I divided the part 1 into different parts, so it's easy for you to clear your concept and digest the topic easily. So the part 1a was about what actually is classical conditioning, in which we learn about Ivan Pavlov. How did he discover classical conditioning? We also learn about Ivan Pavlov's his experiment with his dogs. We also learn about the elements of classical conditioning in the part 1a. Then in part 1b, we learn about the stimulus discrimination and stimulus generalization in the classical conditioning. Then in part 1c, we learn about extinction and spontaneous recovery. So there were different terms, there were different topics that we covered in the classical conditioning. So if you have missed any of the previous lecture, any of the previous topic, I have compiled all the videos in a proper sequence and compile them in a single playlist according to chapter, according to lessons, and according to topics. So if you want to watch any of the previous lecture, you can visit the playlist section. You can also check the description section of this video, in which I have provided all the links of the previous lectures. Go ahead, click on those links and watch those videos. So this is going to be the lesson 2, part 1D, conditioned emotional response, which is also abbreviated as CER. And under this topic, we will also learn vicarious learning. So later, scientists took Pavlov's concepts and expanded them to explain not only animals' behavior but also human behavior. And one of the earliest of these studies showed that even an emotional response could be conditioned. Now, what is a conditioned emotional response? We will start with Watson and Lil Albert. Since we all know that John B. Watson was the founder of behaviorism, he firmly believed that all behavior could be explained in terms of learning, including even phobias, which is the irrational fear response, that the Freudian camp thought were deeply rooted in the unconscious mind, and his classic study or his classic experiment with little Albert and the white rat was a demonstration of learning a phobia. And it was also a very good example of the classical conditioning. So Watson paired the presentation of a white rat to the baby with a loud, scary noise. And although the baby was not afraid of the rat, he was naturally afraid of the loud noise and started to cry. Soon, every time the baby saw the rat, he started to cry in conditioning terms. Now here the loud noise was the unconditioned stimulus, the fear of the noise, the unconditioned response. The white rat became the conditioned stimulus, and the fear of the rat, which is the phobia, was the conditioned response. Now, after a little, Albert had been conditioned to fear a white rat. He became afraid of anything white and fuzzy, including John Watson himself with a white fuzzy mask on his face. Now, of course, no ethics committee today would approve an experiment in which an infant experiences psychological distress like this. Now, the learning of phobias is a very good example of a certain type of classical conditioning, the conditioned emotional response, also abbreviated as CER. So, the definition would include emotional response that has become classically conditioned to occur to learn stimuli such as fear of dogs or the emotional reaction that occurs when seeing an attractive person. New conditioned responses are some of the easiest form of classical conditioning to accomplish, and our lives are full of them. It's easy to think of fears people might have that are conditioned or learned. For example, a child's fear of the dentist chair, a puppy's fear of rolled up newspaper, or the fear of dogs that is often shown by a person who has been attacked by a dog in the past. But other emotions can be conditioned too. So the next time you watch television, watch the commercials closely. Advertisers often use certain objects or certain types of people in their ads to generate a certain emotional response in viewers, hoping that emotional response will become associated with their product. Attractive models, cute little babies, and adorable puppies are some of the examples of the stimuli the advertising world uses to tug at our heartstrings, so to speak. Now, other television messages are meant to elicit a fear response. For example, if you don't brush your teeth, you will get a tooth decay. If you use this toothpaste, you will be able to save your teeth, or such as messages about what drugs will do to your brain. And in a class public service message from the 1980s, a woman holds up an egg and says, "This is your brain." She then drops the eggs into a grease filled smoking hot skillet and says, "This is your brain on drugs. Any question?" This part was supposed to cause disgust by showing the eggs being cracked into a filthy looking skillet and getting immediately fried to a crisp. So, the television aids uses such emotional techniques to condition your emotions. Let us start with vicarious conditioning. It is even possible to become conditionally or classically conditioned by simply watching someone else respond to a stimulus in a process called vicarious conditioning. In other words, vicarious learning. So we will start with the proper definition of vicarious conditioning. Vicarious conditioning is basically a classical conditioning of a reflex, response, or emotion by watching the reaction of another person. Many years ago, children received vaccination shots in school. The nurse lined the children up, and one by one, they had to go forward to get a needle in the arm. When some children received their shots, they cried quite a bit, but by the time the nurse got near the end of the line of the children, they were all crying, and many of them before she ever touched a needle to skin. And they had learned the fear reflex from watching the reaction of other children. So, this is basically an example of vicarious learning. You watch others without experiencing that, and then you learn. So this was all about today's video. If your concept is clear, you can like the video. If there was any topic which was a bit confusing, you did not get it, you can ask us in the comment section and we will be happy to help you out. Plus, if you are new to this channel, you can subscribe to our channel, click on the bell icon so you will never ever miss any notification. You can also share the link of this video, the link of our channel with your family members and friends because sharing is caring. Until then, Allah Hafiz.